Hi everyone, I'm Kendall with Onyx Point, and I am here to talk to you today about an open source tool called Compliance Engine. So first, a little about me. I've been with Onyx Point for a few years now, and spend most of that time as a traveling Puppet consultant, so perhaps some of you have seen me before. I've seen a lot of infrastructures, and one of the common themes I have seen at all these infrastructures is that they are governed by some form of compliance. Some of these customers are government customers, so they're familiar with regulations such as NIST 800-53, or perhaps our friends over in the EU with GDPR, and some others maybe with PCI-DSS or others. So Compliance Engine is a tool that is aimed at helping companies or government organizations like those meet those regulations through Puppet. Compliance Engine is open source, and it can be found at the link on your screen. And what we're really hoping to do today is start a conversation around Compliance Engine and how it can be used in any Puppet module to help make your infrastructure more compliant. Like other languages, this is a sort of markup language, or at least part of the Compliance Engine is a markup language. And the reason for that is because what we want to do is we want to map the regulations as they're written in policies into usable Puppet data. And for those of you familiar, you've probably seen data in the form of Hiera data. And most commonly, I think people think of Hiera data at their environment level. And so the way that environment level Hiera data works is that first, you must specify hierarchies or tiers to a hierarchy in your main Hiera file. So just like any other layer, like environment or node group or something similar, you would have the Compliance Engine listed as one of the levels. As a customer, you're used to owning everything at your environment level. Most commonly, this is done through a control repo or something similar, where you use R10K or Code Manager to grab information that is specific to everything in your infrastructure. And with the environment data or the environment level of Compliance Engine that has your data, this would be no different. This data would be stored in your control repository and would be deployed along with the rest of your environment. So at the module layer, things can be a little bit different. In recent editions of Hiera, it's been possible to have data specifically within the module itself. I think often this is referred to as the data in modules pattern or the modular data pattern. But what it allows you to do is it allows you to have Hiera-specific data in the module itself. We hope that you'll be able to start using the Compliance Engine to create compliance-specific data for your customers downstream that you know are regulated by, again, either government or industry standards. So with the popular NTP module published by Puppet Labs that I'm sure most of you are using today, you're familiar with overriding probably a couple of key value pairs. I wanted to take an example of one of those and show you what the Compliance Engine data for a key value pair in Puppet Labs NTP would look like. The example here is NTP max poll, which is the maximum number of polls that a client can poll against the NTP server. In the case of Compliance Engine, the first thing that we want to do is define a unique ID. So that's the first line that we're looking at here. Next, you'll see the usual key value parameter and value. So that's NTP max poll, and we're setting a value of 10. And then everything after that is metadata that the Compliance Engine uses to either cross-reference these to policies or to confine based on versions or to just reference back to some regulation. A lot of times the way that an upgrade goes in the Puppet world is done by creating an entire new environment in your control repo with new data, perhaps new modules, and that gets deployed and some canary nodes get moved over. And so what this allows you to do is it allows you to say, I know that this data will work with these versions of these modules, and it allows upgrades to be much easier. Next, we'll talk about the CEs, or the configuration elements. Those are just unique identifiers used within the Compliance Engine itself, and again, it helps you to cross-reference between different STIGs in this case, or compliance profiles, or other compliance items themselves. And the controls themselves are specific to what policy. So in this case, it's the DSS STIG, but imagine that could also say PCI-DSS, or it could say GDPR or anything similar. So you might be able to imagine that a compliant infrastructure is many of these checks put together. With the compliance engine, we refer to these groups of checks as profiles. This is not a profile in the traditional sense of a Puppet profile, in that it is not a Puppet module. What it is a data sheet or higher a data file that has a bunch of checks defined. So what we're looking at here is the NIST 800-53 profile that we've built. This is available in the open source compliance engine code, and it's several hundred of these checks put together. So what's great about this is that it allows you, once the checks are defined in other pieces or in places of your hierarchy, to create your own profiles and just include them with a single line like we have here. So NIST 800-53 is popular because it's the parent profile of many other profiles, most popularly PCI-DSS and others. But also some industries and some companies use those as guidelines, but oftentimes they have to create their own or stray from them in some way. And what this allows you to do is give you a baseline that you can copy from. And what's also great about the compliance engine is that it does not confine you to only one profile. You can use several profiles merged together. You can use different profiles for different pieces or groups of your infrastructure. You can use one for everything if you want, or you could even just have this one as a fallback and then do node-specific overrides, or at the module level even, just do module-specific overrides. So I mentioned that the NIST 800-53 profile specifically is open source, and you can find it at our GitHub page, and that's true. And it's also worth noting that at Onyx Point we've created several other profiles for HIPAA and SOX and PCI-DSS. So if any of you are curious as to what those look like, we certainly would welcome you to reach out and ask us a bit more about them. Or if you'd just like to take a stab at creating your own based on this profile here, we'd encourage you to do that too. So once you've chosen a profile or several profiles, what comes next is either the enforcement or the validation of that compliance engine data. And what compliance engine does here is, after the catalog is compiled, is it enforces the values, if you've so chosen, inside of the catalog, and then builds a report for you. And what's in that report is some basic metadata about the node, like the IP address and such, and then some compliance engine specific data, such as which profiles you were using, how compliant you were in terms of percentage, and if you weren't compliant, what things made you non-compliant. And the way that it does this is that it uses the markup language that we looked at before, and it uses the mappings from the policies and says, I know that a value was supposed to be this, or perhaps it was supposed to be within a range, and it checks those using validators internally. And if they are not returned positive within those validators, then they get set in this report. In addition, what you get is the class parameter specific values that could be changed to either make yourself compliant or just show you where you weren't. And it also gives you just which classes they were. So this report can be generated in either YAML or JSON, and we encourage you to both keep it server-side, where it's stored by default, to have, and you could build your own custom reports out of, or I know a lot of people use popular tools like Splunk or Elasticsearch, and because of the simple and common data format here, it can be ingested into really any of those. We also at Onyx Point have built some of our own visualization tools around this compliance reporting, and I'd like to show you what that looks like to give you an idea of what we're talking about. So I hope I've piqued everyone's interest a bit in Compliance Engine. I know that compliance is not the sexiest topic to talk about, but it is important, and I know that it is one that everybody has to worry about at least a little bit. So the hope here really is that both people come and join us. We have channels on Slack that we can talk to anyone about this, and those are linked in case anyone would like to join. You're also welcome to hop on the GitHub page and hop in on a discussion or ask questions there if you have them. And what we're really hoping for is some of the module maintainers, either as vendors or some of the open source communities, to hop on board. And what we really would like is for the popular modules out there to start creating or even just using some of the compliance engine data that we have available. And what that'll do is it'll allow people and customers like yourselves to just sort of get the compliance engine data by default. You won't have to do anything, it'll just be there. It won't force you into using it, but it'll give you the opportunity to if you want. So with that, thank you for listening to the talk, and if anyone has any questions, please feel free to reach out to either me or hop on Slack and ask away. We would love to talk about it. We'd love to get a large group going, and I hope everyone has a great day. Thanks.